Hi, Rastafarian here. I did get a video request, actually, to talk about this subject, and this video is going to be all about picking your form in low elo. Now, we have a couple rules of thumb. First things first, you're never picking a form for your team. I feel like this is an important thing that people need to understand because you are the only constant in your games and you will not run into the same people consistently like you would be if you were playing in high-low. You can only really count on yourself, so you need to pick your form based on uh, the enemy team comp and what is going to have the most success versus them. So at the time that this video is coming out is currently I have to actually check the date. August 9th, 2020. As of the current patch, a lot of people are going to tell you that Blue Kayn is stronger than Red Kayn. Now, while this is true, Blue Kayn does come with some caveats. Most specifically, knowing how to close out a game, because Blue Kayn, he does fall off later in the game. He is probably one of the weaker late game assassins, but he's probably one of, if not the strongest, early to mid game assassin once he gets form. I know that sounds kind of weird because like base Kayn is a terrible champion, but like Blue Kayn is very strong. Um, so we're just gonna go in here real quick. This is Lolalytics. This is one of only two data aggregation sites that I would recommend using. The other is u.gg. Anything else, don't use it. Champion GG, Blitz, stuff like that. Stay away. Lolalytics and u.gg, definitely. This is the best stats website. So if you ever need like runes or stuff, definitely come here. I'm not sponsored, by the way. This is what I actually use when I'm climbing. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna set this to gold because most of the players that play this game ranked wise are silver or gold. So, and we're gonna go to Kayn. Now, as we can see, based just on this, all we have to do to tell which form has a higher win rate at this rank is we just got to scroll down and look at the runes. Because obviously you're only ever going to go Conquer on Red Kayn and you're only ever going to go Dark Harvest on Blue Kayn. So we can see that very clearly at this rank, Conqueror wins significantly more, almost 2.5%, a little bit more. I'm bad at math. More than blue, and this is also reflected in the item sets, as we can see here. Um, Black Warrior and a Black Cleaver has a much higher win rate than Warrior and a Yomu's, which is obviously this is the Blue Kayn build. So keep that in mind. At this rank, statistically, which is one of the only objective things that we have to go on, statistically speaking, Red Kayn is better than Blue Kayn at low elo. Obviously, this gets a little skewed as we go up to D2+. We see pretty much still the same thing. It makes sense. Red Kayn is a lot easier to play. Well, here we see Blue Kayn has a nice win rate right here with these two builds, which is what Narrowsid and I have been running recently, and Darbarf. On NA speaking, of course. So this is aggregating data from all around the world, but we are definitely contributing to that quite a bit. So anyway, I have a little list here. This is important. This is champions you really, under any circumstance, really don't want to play Red Kayn into, and I'll go through each of them and give a little explanation as to why. And this isn't to say that you should never pick Red Kayn into these champions, because obviously there are some times that you might have to, i.e. you might have Cassiopeia and like 4 melee champions. Maybe it's Cassiopeia 80 carry, Garen top lane, a Hecarim jungle, Galio mid lane. This would be a really weird team combo, like Nautilus support. Like, yeah, you'd be griefing to not go red into that team. So Cassiopeia. The reason why we really don't like Cassiopeia, and this is actually my least favorite champion to play against, like even more than like Graves or Kindred. The reason why we hate this champion so much is because of her W, Miasma. Now, Miasma is the pool that she throws out onto the ground, the very wide pool of purple poison, and it has a grounding effect on it. Now, grounding means that you cannot use movement skills, and unfortunately for us, Kayn's Q, E, and Ultimate are all tagged as movement skills. That means if you get W'd by Cassiopeia, you have to manually walk out of it, and the only thing that you can cast is your W. So this champion is incredibly painful to play. It's also, she's a little bit overtuned on the current patch with Phase Rush build. Conquer build, not so good anymore. Phase Rush build makes her uncatchable. She'll kite you forever. Just a frustrating champion to play against, especially for us. Now, Poppy seems a little weird because she's a melee champion. The problem with Poppy is that you will go Red Kayn into her if you have to versus her team, But this is a champion that regardless of what form you are, you just want to avoid. You don't want to interact with this champion. That's because of her W. Um, she will absolutely slaughter you. This champion's base damages are incredibly high. She has percent max health on her Q. It's a double proc ability. It can smack you for like 10% of your current HP, and like if she hits both parts, which is guaranteed if she gets a stun. And the other reason, of course, is that um her obviously as Red Kayn, our bread and butter damage abilities are Q, right? Especially versus tanky melee champions, which Poppy is. But her W makes it so that you can't cast it, because if you cast it, you'll take damage, you'll get grounded and slowed, which is awful. For C Cassiopeia for reasons why getting grounded is the worst. So the thought process here would be that we hope that we can go blue into the rest of her team and we don't have to interact with her at all. If you have to go red, like, yeah, she's a melee champion. Yeah, she's a tank. She could be an HP reset. But, like, you really just want to avoid this champion at all costs. Like, just pray that her team is just four squishies and Poppy so that you can just play around her team instead of her. Fiora also will probably seem kind of weird because she's a melee champion. So you would think, oh, I want to go red into her, of course. That's not the case. So Blue Kayn can represent a damage threat to Fiora before she gets a Death's Dance. Typically, they'll go Hydra Triforce and then DD. So Blue Kayn can represent a damage threat to Fiora. The thing that we're worried about with this champion is that if the Fiora is smart at all, you will never be able to actually use your W as red against this champion, because it's a very telegraphed straight line knockup. You are asking to get stunned and then killed. Also, if she times the parry on your ult right, it just goes on cooldown, which sucks. I mean, that can happen to blue too, but like we're really just worried about like giving her a free stun. We're actually, by playing Red Kayn, we are actually making this champion directly stronger. Like a better champion objectively than she would be if we had went Blue Kayn. So, because she has a stun now, guaranteed. So that's why we really don't want to play Red and Fiora. Also, she will outduel you too, because she's Fiora and you're like kind of a sustained damage bruiser. So just like she excels against your class. So we don't want to go Red into Kindred because of kiting potential. Red Kayn is very slow, and you will absolutely 100% get kited out by this champion. I talk about this a little in my matchup sheet in the K-Mains Discord. This is just a bad matchup for Kayn in general. I'd put it probably as like the second worst matchup in like out of all the jungle champions. Thankfully she's not very popular at low elo. She might be now because the Spirit Blossom skin just came out. So, forgive me if I end up being wrong on that. But the thing is that if she goes the very popular Bruiser build, which is Blood Razor or Warrior, she can go either one. It's interchangeable into Black Cleaver with Red Smite. Red Kayn can never actually present enough of a damage threat because Red Kayn is actually a lower damage champion. Like, he'll just typically have enough damage to one-shot 80 carries with his combo, which is saying a lot considering how much damage is in the game now. But he's a fairly low damage champion, especially on squishies, and you will never be able to fight Kindred through the Black Cleaver defensive stats, her natural kiting ability, and Red Smite damage reduction. It's just not going to be possible. So you'll just get blown out of the water by this champion. If you have to play against this champion, please go blue. Because if you go blue, you can actually represent a huge damage threat to her, forcing her to ult, and then you will just ult her and hope that she doesn't get saved by her teammates when you come out. But if you catch her alone, she's just like jungle food once you get blue and you haven't fallen too far behind. Brand probably seems a little weird. This is just because if the brand is good, which would be asking a lot for Gold Elo, which is what this list is made for. He's actually incredibly like painful to deal with because of just how much damage his kit has and the fact that he can interrupt your dash with EQ. If he stuns you with EQ, full combos you, and then walks away, you have absolutely no response to it, and you probably just took half or over half your health and damage. And he may have killed you if it was a team fight, because his ult will be bouncing as well. You have to go blue into this, but you don't have to. You want to go blue into this champion for the same reason, because blue can build Edge of Night first, or like after Warrior, or after your post Warrior item. Basically, blue can just get Edge of Night, and Edge of Night will actually stop that combo from happening because If he E's you, the spell shield will eat that, and you will not have his passive applied to me, which means that his Q will not stun you, which means that he can't interrupt his dash, which means that if you're landing your skills, you're one-shotting him. So, we'll go on to Zillion next. One sec. My chair is a little fucked up. I have to fix it. Okay. So, Zillion, again, seems weird. You would think, wait, you know, Zillion's just going to ult somebody, so if I play blue into him, he's just going to save people. And while this is true, Zillion isn't necessarily here because of his ult. Zillion's here because of his kiting potential. So Zillion has like a 90% slow on his E, and he can apply it twice in rapid succession. You will never catch this champion. And he actually does quite a bit of damage, so he represents a huge threat to you unless you're actively building Spirit Visage. Death Stance, actually, this is one of the champions that I don't recommend building Death Stance against, because you will be taking the damage, and like, yeah, it has the damage mitigation dot thing on it where like you take half of it, or you take like 30% of it as a bleed. But we really like Death Stance against teams where we can heal through the dot. If they have Zillion, you're not going to be able to heal through the dot. You'll be taking double bomb, getting stunned, taking double bomb damage, and then getting kited while the dot is just killing you. It's actually very, very suboptimal against Zillion. So he's mostly here for the kiting potential. Veigar, similarly, Red Kayn just can't really do anything as this champion. If you get caged, the only thing that you can do is hope that someone is near the cage and you've dealt damage to them recently, so you can ult through the cage, i.e. you might ult Veigar and just follow him through the cage. But the reason that we don't want to go red into here is that if he builds Zhonya's, even as red, you're just not going to be a damage threat. And when champions are going to threaten you as Kayn, you want to be able to threaten them back, and you can't threaten the champions on this list as Red Kayn. You would need a higher sources of damage, which you would go blue for. Vayne should be pretty self-explanatory. There's quite a few AD carries on this list, actually. She's like, kite outplay queen. If the Vayne player is any brain, you will never hit this champion with a W, and good luck killing anyone as Red Kayn without hitting a W. Like, what are you gonna do? Auto them to death? Q them to death? No. She's just gonna blast you with Bork Gwinsu's. It's gonna be over. Ashe, for the same reason, she'll just kite you to death. Caitlyn, for the same reason, she'll kite you to death. She'll set up trap combos. Kai'Sa, very similar to Vayne, stealth mechanic that resets with autos. Soraka might seem a little out of place too. That's mostly just because it's very similar to the Cassiopeia thing. She has a pool that she can put on the ground where when she does it, all you can do is stand there and walk out of it, and you get rooted. It's super, super unoptimal. And you want to threaten her, obviously, because she's a squishy, so you'd go blue. I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory. Champions that you don't want to blue into, literally just any tank. It sucks. You'll never kill them. There, like, isn't really any squishies that you particularly don't want to blue into. Like, there's some, like... I'm trying to think, actually. There really aren't any. I already did this before the list, but I'm just going through in my head to make sure that I didn't miss anything. No, you can go blue into pretty much every squishy and it'll be fine. May just suck because they built Zonias, but like it's whatever. But yeah, just don't like blue. You just don't want to go into tanks. Anyone that stacks armor sucks, especially because of the way that Blue Kayn's passive works. But if you know about that, then you know about that. Basically, it's just armor is doubly effective against Kayn because both forms actually. Both of his passives, the healing from red and the damage from blue, is based on post mitigation damage. So the more armor they build, the less you'll heal and the less magic damage you'll deal. So I don't want to talk about that too much. That's not what this video is about. I have just a few sample comps right here that we can talk about. So Garen, Lee Sin, LeBlanc, Ezreal, and Leona. This is a very standard red comp. The range champions that they have suck to play against as red. Like, Ezreal sucks to play against as red, LeBlanc sucks to play against as red. But if you're in low elo, most of your team fights are probably going to be front to back anyway, so they're just going to, like, run into you, and you really like champions that run into you as Red Kayn. So, that's pretty standard red in my book, especially if you're low elo. If I was high elo, I would consider playing blue into this, because Lee Sin isn't very tanky, and Blue Kayn can destroy these champions early and mid game. So you'd be able to create a lead. But I definitely would recommend going red into this if you don't think that you can create a big lead and then capitalize it. So now we have Mordekaiser, Kha'Zix, Ahri, Caitlyn, and Morgana. Now this might seem like a red Kayn comp at first, but if we look here, This is important. We go to Kha'Zix. We go to gold. Now, his most standard build is no longer the Red Smite Abuse Bruiser build. And if we look down here, see Conqueror only has a 7.2 pick rate. This is what signifies that someone is going Bruiser Kha'Zix, which is they will build Red Smite Warrior, Black Cleaver, Death's Dance. They are very hard to kill. You can't assassinate them. And we can see that between the two assassination runes, this makes up like, man, my math is so bad. Like 80%. So 80% of the time that you see a Kha'Zix in this elo, it's going to be Blue Smite Duskblade, and that's what Blue Kayn is good against. So this champion, for the sake of this comp, we're counting as blue champ. The only red champ on this team is Mordekaiser. All these other champs you want blue into. So that's why this ends up being a blue comp. Even though, like, I mean, yeah, technically you could go red into this team and it wouldn't be the end of the world. It would not be very efficient. This is something that you would blue into. So here we have Fiora, Volibear, Orianna, Lucian, and Thresh. For the sake of most comps, because of the way that Thresh tends to build, we consider Thresh a red champ. Because he builds tanky armor items and you won't be able to kill him through Aftershock as Blue Kayn. You cannot threaten this champion as Blue Kayn, under typical circumstances, obviously. Like, if he's, like, super behind, then, yeah, you can do whatever. So, despite the fact that they do have Fiora, which is a champion that we said we don't want to play red into, you are much safer going red against this team. So, for the sake of this, we will consider Fiora a red champ. So, that gives us 3 red champs and 2 blue champs. So this is something that we would go red into. You have much easier time going red. The only thing the caveat of be very careful of Fiora. Otherwise, red comp. And this is just a pretty standard blue comp. I mean, you know, Pyke being melee, even if he is melee, we aren't seeing those Pyke builds where they build full tank items anymore. So like we can go blue Kayn into them and we'll kill him very quickly. Especially because when you ult him, and he like W's away to get his passive regen, he obviously you will still be seeing him, so he won't heal at all. It makes it like, I mean, it's not like a super giga OP hidden counter, but like it's a very good mechanic to have against Pyke. The same thing goes with like Akali. If you ult Akali and she shrouds, your team can see her. As with any stealth champ, so very good against Shaco too. But this is very standard blue comp. Blue champ, blue champ, blue champ. Red or blue champ. I actually wrote about this in my matchup sheet in the K-Mains Discord, which you should totally check out. And this is blue champ. So, yeah. Keep in mind, I will say this just to get that out there. I didn't say it at the beginning of the video, unfortunately. This is 100%, this is my opinion. This is an opinion piece. Not everybody will agree with me, and that is fine. I'm sure some other high elo players would disagree with me on some of this, but this video was strictly made. Excuse me, I gotta take a sip of water. Strictly made for low elo. I would not take this list as literally if you are anywhere above low platinum. So anywhere outside of plat 4, I'm looking at going blue way more often. But as I said in the beginning of the game, statistically speaking, red Kayn is stronger at this elo. So comps that like otherwise, if I saw this in my game in like high diamond grandmasters, I would go blue into this team. But if you're low rank, I wouldn't risk it. I would just go red. It's gonna be safer. So hopefully this video helps some of you guys out. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv Rastafarian. I have to think about how I spell my own name. RHAASTIFARIAN, I think. I'll put a link in the description because that was weird that I just had to spell my own name, but I digress. Hope you guys have a great day and hope that this can help some of you out with picking your form. I've definitely seen like a lot of questions about this. So I really hope that this could shed some light on the situation with my opinion, of course. All right. Anyway, you guys have a great day. Good luck in solo queue.